Okay, Jim Quick, I've been dying to talk to you about this stuff because you're an elite brain coach to some remarkable people out there. Like your roster is unreal. But what kind of foods like can we really use to optimize our brain? Like if I came to you and I was like, okay, man, I need to completely revamp my life because I need to memorize a bunch of lines. I need to be on it. I need to feel really cognitively aware. If we were looking at my diet, what kind of things would you tell me to eat?
So this is the best thing. I mean, I love talking about food because it could be nutritious and also delicious, right? And whole area of science called neuronutrition, talking about the benefits of certain foods to help with mood, help with be neuroprotective, also as well reduce anxiety even and potentially some undue stress. Some of my go-to, and we'll kind of I love your take in some of these.
I also put a link down below for 30% off Thrive Market. Thrive Market is an online membership-based grocery store. But if you're looking for fun, kind of healthier options, especially when it comes down to processed food, like you're saying, hey, I would rather opt for Siete chips that are using cassava instead of regular corn chips. Or hey, I want a macaroni and cheese that doesn't have the preservatives in it. Or maybe I want to get some like dehydrated vegetable snacks. It's the place for you. And you can sort by different diet type and all this stuff. They've been a sponsor on this channel for years. So full disclaimer, yes, they're a sponsor, but you supporting them supports this channel. So again, that link is in the top line of the description for 30% off your entire grocery order, plus a free gift when you use that special link down below.
I tend to have avocados. Those are my favorite. And I know everyone's a little bit bio-individual, but the monounsaturated fat, is your brain is mostly fat. I like to mix avocado with a lot of our, salads and, as part of my meals. Another one, let's talk about mulberries.
Yeah, I know. It's a wild one, right?
Right. People don't, they're pretty easy to find.
Yeah.
Especially here in the States. Do you?
Yeah. So mulberries, they're kind of in the same category as like with blueberries, right? You get these high anthocyanin rich.
Like these are all like the brain berries.
Yeah. And it's like generally speaking, quote unquote, the darker the berry, the better it is for your brain. That's not always 100% true, but in the category of like the bluish purple berries, the darker the berry, the better, right? So it's like blueberries. And the blueberries, you just really want to go for the little wild blueberries, the little teeny ones, not the ones that are the size of a cantaloupe.
Yeah, those are some of my favorites. Actually, at the end, after we come up with whatever number we're going to come up with, I'll teach everyone a quick memory trick to remember all this. A lot of times you go to the store to buy one thing. I don't know if you had this experience. You go to the store, like the grocery store, Erewhon down the street, and you want to go get one thing, and you come back with like 2 bags full of things, except for that one thing that you went there for. So I'll give people a really great technique at the end. So definitely stay tuned.
Have you heard of Haskap berries before?
No.
Those are like a Nova Scotian berry. How
do they taste?
They're delicious, but they're hard to find in the States. But that is legitimately the most anthocyanin-rich berry. So, and the anthocyanins are kind of what we're after when you're looking at the brain foods.
Right.
So it's just one that people don't really hear a lot about. And I talked about it randomly on an Instagram reel like a year ago. And like the outpouring of support from Nova Scotians, they're just like, you acknowledged our berry. You acknowledged, but it's, I think you can find like freeze-dried powder and stuff of it, but it's hard to get the actual berry in the States.
Yeah. I love a nice mix of berries. For me, they're very, extremely delicious and they're very neuroprotective. So yeah, let's make that number 2. For me, number 3, I'm thinking about things I ate today. I had a lot of broccoli, vitamin K. This is one of my favorite kind of go-tos. I know you did a video recently on some of the nutritional benefits from. I saw one. It was broccoli with some turmeric.
Yep.
And nutritional yeast.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. That was a little while ago. But I do you eat broccoli? Is that kind of like a staple?
Yeah,
I know it's kind of boring, but
no. Broccoli. Any cruciferous vegetable like broccoli. I don't eat cauliflower straight up. I'll eat cauliflower in a rice form. But it's like broccoli and asparagus are like my 2 go-tos. Broccoli arguably has the better brain benefit than asparagus.
Do you ever sprout them? I
have, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we do that a lot.
Yeah, it's I know that, and unless you're eating them raw. Like people, there's obviously a lot of people are very outspoken about not wanting their vegetables now because of anti-nutrients, things like that. Broccoli, once it's cooked,
Right.
is some of the lowest anti-nutrient content of any vegetable. So if that's a concern for people,
Right.
broccoli is not a terrible one, especially if it's been sprouted.
Yeah, and it has more sulforaphane when it's sprouted, I believe.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that for me, I grew up eating a lot of broccoli, so it's kind of one of my go-tos. I'll say olive oil. I'll add that in just to kind of mix it up a little bit. Anti-inflammatory, potentially could help with glutathione.
Yeah.
You know, so that's something. And also, I love the taste. I don't know. I like putting olive oil on like almost everything. It just tastes better, whether it's fish or salads or anything else. Do you use coconut oil or what do
No, I do it all. I mean, macadamia nut oil, avocado oil, olive oil, all in those like monounsaturated fatty acid spectrum. You know, and it's interesting. There's some literature that's been coming out that is suggesting that monounsaturated fats are improving our insulin sensitivity, which makes a lot of sense as to why they have been demonstrated in a lot of literature to be so strong for the brain. Because at the end of the day, our brain is still such a glucose hog, even though it's made up of fats, it utilizes a lot of glucose. And if you think about it logically, like the mitochondria in our brain, like if they have a keen uptake of sugar, I mean sugar in a good way, glucose, if they're able to utilize glucose effectively because those cells are insulin sensitive, then you're going to have better energy utilization. The mitochondria is going to function better. So it's like people think, oh, great. Okay, macadamia nut oil, avocado oil, it's great because it's going to potentially stave off insulin resistance. That is great. But what it's doing up here as far as potentially staving off insulin resistance, you're going to notice quickly.
Yeah. Do you follow? So I know it's not just what we eat, but it's also how we eat. You don't want to eat in a stress state. You want to be in that kind of parasympathetic rest and digest. A lot of people are eating and they're working or doing something kind of that they can't relax into it, or an opportunity to socialize. Do you also? It's not just what you eat, but also the timing of it. For me, probably 4 or 5 days out of the week, I intermittent fast. I've never been but that's also because I was never a big breakfast eater for myself. I'll generally have my meal right after my workout, and I tend to have dinner, ending pretty early. But also in terms of glucose spikes, do you do that like savory, instead of sweet? We had Glucose Goddess on our podcast. Has she been on your show?
Yeah, she has. Yeah, about
Okay.
almost a year ago. Yeah, she's great.
Okay, so like in terms of her rules, a savory breakfast instead of a sweet, vinegar before some of the starches to
Yep.
mitigate the spike. Do you do?
Yeah, anything to modulate glucose. And as someone that I was, type 2 diabetic for a while when I was overweight. So after I sort of got out of that world and kind of regained my health in that world, it's something that since I've always kind of flirted on that line of being insulin resistant since being overweight, it takes a long time to bring that back. I'm very, very aware of that. And yeah, I put in all the stops to try to keep my glucose under control. And I feel like it's interesting because again, like the brain is a glucose hog, right? People think so that they automatically think because the brain runs on glucose, you want to have these high levels of glucose. I mean, the body's going to regulate your glucose levels for what you need. You don't need to bring it higher than what, the homeostatic level is. So any ways to get your blood sugar just stable. We're not talking about making it super low or doing anything ridiculous. We're talking about stability. It's these big undulations that are problematic because then everything has to recalibrate,
Yeah.
So I always like, it's kind of my goal. I'm not afraid of carbohydrates, but I try to make sure that when I have them, I'm doing what I can to keep my blood sugar from just skyrocketing.
Yeah, in terms of order, our family tends to follow the protocol in terms of, and we're not like religious about it, but the vegetables and then the proteins and the fats, and then our starches, and then moving afterwards. I think is just very important. But I know we're digressing here. So that was so we went through. I would say besides we went broccoli, olive oil, eggs. I have every day. Yeah. I still, you hear it, people talk about being like Mother Nature's multivitamin. The choline in eggs is very good for cognitive health. If it's good cholesterol for testosterone, for people. you eat eggs?
yeah.
And I ask you a lot of questions because I'm also a podcaster also. So like I really like I'm in kind of interview mode and I want to.
No, I love it. I think it's a cool
I'm
different.
fascinated in terms of your approach.
It's a nice format to interview and be interviewed at the same time, and like kind of be able to do this because it's often the podcast world is just so like one-sided, but it's nice to have a back and forth on it. The egg thing, that's gone down in history as one of the like quintessential like brain foods for me. Especially if I'm kind of having a lower carb day, and I need this, the calorie to nutrient density is just so high in those, and beta carotene. So you're getting powerful antioxidant effect. You're getting the choline. You're getting, like you mentioned, the cholesterol. People don't realize that people think eggs are all saturated fat. Like eggs are a high amount of monounsaturated fat. People don't realize that. So once again, you're talking very cardioprotective, metabolically protective fat that is phenomenal. And again, it's one of those foods that you will feel quickly. Like choline is something that you can feel pretty quick. And it's not the same as just saying, I'm going to take a choline supplement. Like choline in its bioavailable form, working synergistically with the vitamin A and the vitamin D and the other aspects of an egg, that's what makes the magic.
And then the choline becomes the acetylcholine.
Correct.
Yeah. Very, very good for I just noticed that if I'm traveling, I don't have access to that. That for me, it's a superfood for the brain. How about some unique fishes that are high in DHA? I mean, most people go to salmon or sardines. Do you have a favorite fish for brain?
Okay, that's a good question because, it's easy to default to the salmon and sardines, but like if you want to go true bang for the buck, highest DHA content per serving, it's mackerel. Yeah, it's definitely. I'm also a big fan of oysters, which are very, very high. Like you can get smoked oysters. They don't have to be raw, but oysters, obviously, you got the high omega-3 content in conjunction with the zinc, which is very, very good for the brain and also for testosterone function, which is nice for us guys. But it's, those two, mackerel and like shellfish in general. So
what about fish eggs or caviar, salmon roe?
That is a good question. Like if you're ever getting poke or getting sushi or anything like that, first of all, like sashimi, and then just ask for masago, ask for additional masago. You're talking like straight up like EPA and DHA there. It's basically like taking little tiny fish oil capsules, but spoonful,
Yeah, my wife, when she was pregnant, she was like living off of, she was just craving, these foods, which I understand also could potentially be good for, for a baby when a mother's pregnant.
Yep.
Yeah. Not the sushi part, but just the cooked fish. I go to daily, and I'm going to get some later today. This is what I'm thinking about going to Air One. Would be bone broth.
Yep.
That's something that high, in. Sorry, I was just going to get a drink real quick. Bone broth is one of my favorite brain foods. I don't know if it's technically a brain food, but the collagen, it's just anti-inflammatory. Is it part of your diet also? Like,
it is a part of my diet for sure. And then you have the glycine content, very good for the brain too. So you get kind of a calming effect. It's a kind of a cooling effect that feels really good.
I even do it even before I go to bed sometimes. And I think that cooling effect is supportive of me getting good sleep.
It's also a great way, like if I'm, like I feel very mentally sharp if I'm calorically restricted. Like I do. Like if I eat less and I'm in a slight caloric deficit.
Do you work out in that state also?
Yeah. And I think a lot of people think like, oh my gosh, my brain's not going to function when I don't eat a lot. I mean, the brain really does do quite well when we're not bogged down with digestion. It's not to say that eating food is bad. I love food. But if I need my brain to be on, I'll typically be fasted or eat very minimal. The moment that I have a big meal. But one of the things what will disrupt that is if you actually physically feel hungry. Once you start getting the physical manifestation of feeling hungry, that will kind of override, and then you'll start feeling wonky. What I find is like if I'm hungry, just sipping on some bone broth, you're talking 20, 30, 40, 50 calories, and you're feeling satisfied and you're feeling very satiated, but my brain is still on fire. That, and maybe add a little bit of MCT oil to it. So then I'm kind of like maybe adding a tablespoon or 2 tablespoons to bone broth, and just kind of mix it up, kind of froth it up, and just sip on that. That way, it really becomes like a brain cocktail.
How about? Do you have a preference between tea or coffee?
I'm a big tea guy. I don't even drink coffee anymore. I cut the coffee out. I'll do decaf because I feel like the chlorogenic acid and some of the stuff is like beneficial, the polyphenols in coffee. But I try to go pretty low boluses of caffeine. Like I just think that the 50, 60 milligrams I might get from green tea is perfect.
Yeah, our household we do a lot of tea. I grew up drinking a lot of tea. Have a good cup of coffee every once in a while, but it's not my go-to. It's at this of recent, without a doubt. You cook with turmeric. You use turmeric in any way.
Yeah, a lot of turmeric.
The curcumin.
Yep.
You know, potentially anti-inflammatory, good brain benefits.
Yep. I think it's a place that people overlook a lot when you look at the neuroinflammation side. I always kind of explain it like, you've got all these, neurotransmissions that's happening, right? And you've got the synaptic cleft where you've got like basically these transmitters are having to ultimately send a signal between these, the two neurons essentially. So I always say like, think of it as a bridge, okay? And everything has to travel over this bridge. And if you think of neuroinflammation, it's like fog. And think of fog covering a bridge. Everything's going to move kind of slow because they got to make sure they don't run into each other. You're kind of going over. So when you lift that fog through anti-inflammatory foods, and not all foods that are anti-inflammatory are going to be anti-neuroinflammatory because only certain compounds can cross the blood-brain barrier, right? So things like curcumin, which has been demonstrated to have an effect on the brain, that's huge, right? So any means of reducing neuroinflammation seems to be very protective from a cognitive standpoint and also even potentially neurodegenerative conditions too.
Okay, so what about, like I love snacking on blueberries and see my wheelhouse is strategies on how to remember names and read faster and those kind of processes.
Yeah.
So I'm fascinated about this nutrition, especially you probably have forgotten more about nutrition than most people will learn, but I eat a lot of nuts with my berries, right? With my brain berries. Walnuts always has been my go-to. Vitamin E, very neuroprotective. Are there certain nuts that kind of have the same kind of benefits? Do you eat a lot of nuts?
I'm a huge macadamia nut guy.
Yeah.
Macadamia nuts.
That's like dessert for me.
Yeah, they're dangerous because they're calorically dense. You got to be careful with that. But the macadamia nuts have practically no phytic acid, no oxalates. They're extremely easy to break down the nutrients in as compared to other nuts. So like when you look at other nuts, like there's always a concern over phytic acid and oxalates, which are the anti-nutrients that are in nuts, which if you ask me, it's not a huge concern, but there are a large number of people that are very concerned with these anti-nutrients. Well, macadamia nuts, you just don't have to worry about that. It's just a non-issue. And it's because they typically have a hard shell. So the anti-nutrients in nuts are typically there to protect from insects eating the nuts and stuff. But when like macadamia nuts have such a hard shell, it's almost like they biologically just don't need the phytic acid. And with that, they're also very low polyunsaturated fat, so they don't oxidize. Or they do, but it takes a lot more to oxidize. Whereas like, say, a cashew is going to be a higher omega-6 profile, which again, there's a lot of like stuff out there saying omega-6s are inflammatory. That's not necessarily the case. Like the, E2 prostaglandins and that whole entire cascade of like prostaglandins that happens when you eat omega-6s, it all starts with what's called the arachidonic acid chain. It doesn't matter whether it's omega-3, omega-6, it's all going to that arachidonic acid chain and doing its thing from there down. All that simply means is like, don't believe the hype over like omega-6s being inflammatory. But the thing about omega-6s that is true is they go rancid easier. So it's less like when people talk about seed oils being problematic. I don't think seed oils inherently are problematic. I think what happens is typically seed oils oxidize because they're used in restaurant environments and things like that where they just oxidize. That is a problem because the oxidation is damaging for the brain and whatnot. Macadamia nut oil is just a much more stable oil. So it's got a lot more shelf life. It can be heated. So it's just a safer oil if you're going down the nut and seed oil category, not to mention high monounsaturated fatty acid content, so good for the brain there too.
And they're nutritious and delicious. Yeah. It's one of like, especially, I tend to bring those on airplanes when I'm traveling, which I spend a lot of time on planes. All right, so when I'm thinking about my brain, I'm also thinking about, sometimes your gut is referred to as a second brain, fermented foods, sauerkraut. We do a lot of kimchi in my family. Some people don't like the smell of it, but I like a good Korean meal and having kimchi for my microbiome. Is you use a lot of fermented food, probiotics, and
I'm a huge sucker for kimchi just because I love the taste. Like
Yeah.
my wife hates the smell of it. Like she just
Okay.
can't stand it, right? Like if I take it and like I'm known to like just stand in front of the fridge eating it with a spoon, probably dripping the goop everywhere, right?
Yeah.
But it's, this stuff is amazing. And speaking of broccoli, if you haven't tried something, take broccoli, put it on a baking pan, baking sheet, put kimchi over the broccoli, including the sauce and stuff like that, and a
Really?
little bit of nutritional yeast, and then put it in the oven and bake it. And it's amazing, like kimchi broccoli.
Wow.
Might kill off some of the microbial effect, but it tastes amazing. So yeah, but your kimchi, sauerkraut, kefir, like fermented milk, all the way.
Oh yeah. I mean, if we're gonna go into like dairy, I love a good yogurt, and so that's kind of a staple. I'll even put some collagen in it, maybe a little bit of honey, but then I'll put my nuts and berries in there also as well. But that's some kind of my go-to like midday snack. Do you do any kind of yogurt?
Big yogurt guy. Yeah. Any, for me, like tends to be kind of a dessert thing. So I'll do the berries in the yogurt, maybe a little bit of stevia and monk fruit to kind of sweeten it up, and possibly some collagen protein mixed in there too.
Okay, amazing. And then I'll finish it off for me, dark chocolate.
Oh, heck yeah.
Generally, I find that things that are good for my mood is good for my mind.
Yeah.
The flavonoids. I don't know how do you eat? You put it in like a smoothie or?
I just eat it straight up. And I am a weirdo where I will eat straight up 100% dark chocolate, the bitter
Yeah.
stuff, and just chow down on it. So that takes a lot of guts for people to do that sometimes.
Yeah, I could eat most things that I feel like are good for me. If I felt like the pond water in the backyard, well, probably not that far, but if I know it's good for me, I'll generally. But it's great when there's a science to it, like everything, but there's also an art in terms of preparing the food.
Definitely.
Also as well. Well, that's a lot of great brain foods. I'll give everybody right now just a simple way to remember these. And you can remember forwards and backwards. Sometimes just imagine. Okay, so I'm talking to your listeners and viewers. Imagine we're gonna have like a superfood brain party, right? And you're out, and Thomas gives you a call and say, hey, while you're out, can you just pick up these handful of things for the party? And of course you're driving and you can't write any of these things down. So this would be an example of be able to remember these things. The technique is a 2,500-year-old memory technique. It's called the Memory Palace. It's based on remembering things in locations. I'm just going to take a location that we're all familiar with. People could use their kitchen or their living room. I'm going to take our bodies, right? And so what we're going to do is we're going to take, let's say 10 places in our body, and we're going to name them, and we could just go right from top to bottom. And then what we're going to do is take each of the foods, and for, just take 2 seconds and just imagine that food happens to be in that place of your body, right? And so kind of like a little kids game, but remember how fast kids learn, right? So let's do this. So you do this with me. Maybe we could just touch this body part and just say it. So you have your kinesthetic memory and your verbal memory. So 1 is top. So top.
Top.
And then we'll go down. 2 is nose. Mouth. Ears. Let's go 5, throat. 6, shoulders.
Okay.
7 is your collar. Let's do 8, fingers. 9, belly. And let's maybe stop at 10. 10 is your bottom.
Okay.
All right, so literally top to bottom. So again, there's no such thing as a good or bad memory. There's a trained memory and an untrained memory. So again, so just for everyone watching, so it's top, nose, mouth, ears, throat, and then shoulders, collar, fingers, belly, and bottom.
Okay.
So those are the 10 places, and you know them forwards and backwards. It's a little memory exercise. So now let's take some of these foods. We could take them in any order and just place them in that place. All I ask people to do is just kind of pretend you're 8 years old and make it playful. So it's very visual and kind of evokes some kind of emotion. I think the first one we talked about were avocados. So imagine you're using avocados as like a scalp conditioner, right? Perfect. And even if you can't imagine it, just imagine that you're imagining it, right? Second place was nose. And let's take the mulberries.
Yeah.
All right. So mulberries coming out of your nose. And that's kind of like, kind of gross, but what do they smell like, right? What does that feel like to have mulberries stuck in your nose?
Or the texture of them coming out of your nose.
Exactly.
Like,
coming out, and there's other stuff potentially there. But just the more rich you make it, the more And it obviously takes more time to explain it than it is to take a split second to see it. The third place was our mouth. And let's say, let's go back to broccoli. You know, when you have a piece of broccoli stuck in your teeth and how annoying that is, or someone didn't tell you that you had it there. While we're in there, why don't we throw the kimchi in there also? Okay. All right, so you have the kimchi,
It's a mouthful of broccoli.
and the broccoli and all the benefits that come from that. The fourth place were your ears. We talked about the various oils, macadamia nut oil, avocado oil, olive oil, and imagine you're just I don't know, cleaning your ears with that oil, or if you chose olives, maybe you have olive earrings. I mean, there's infinite amount of things you could put there, but the idea here is it gets you to focus on the thing you want to remember, and if you could see it, feel it, and hear it, you're going to remember it. So that was number 4. Number 5 was your throat. I'll pull just one of the things. Let's talk about eggs. Instead of an Adam's apple, you have an egg, and if you want to make it really memorable, make it like it's maybe it's a rotten egg. Not that that's kind of gross, but something that's there. But you imagine hard-boiled egg or some however you
Over
prefer.
easy dripping down your neck.
Exactly,
Yeah.
on just right on your throat, and just kind of see it and feel it. So from here, we said your shoulders, and why don't we put the bone broth there? Maybe you're balancing, you're leaving, you know, whatever. You have like a cup on each.
Okay.
So you're looking to your left, your right, and you have like bone broth as shoulder pads. I don't know.
Nice.
And then the 7 was your collar, and that's when we talked about the various fishes. And so maybe we make a necklace of all these fishes.
Nice.
So instead of, my kind of go-to, they're kind of boring, like the salmon and sardines, but we could put the other ones there also as well.
Mackerel and oysters.
Yeah.
Or pearls, like you get oysters.
Yeah,
and
oysters.
pearls.
Oh,
Yeah, right.
See, that perfect. And
Yeah.
it just kind of ended up like that.
Yeah.
And if you wanted, you could put the fish eggs there also as well, or the salmon roe or the caviar. It's just
I
like,
think JR, my videographer, would probably wear this necklace.
yeah. And then if you want to make it very memorable, just like, what does that smell like, right? As it's hanging from your neck and your collar. And maybe it's like, you know, sushi, and then maybe it's like a week old, right? Ew, but you'll never forget that. If you ever had to wear that, you wouldn't have to review it 10 times, just once. 8 were your fingers. Let's take the turmeric.
The orange fingers.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes. You can't get this
Yep.
golden
under your fingernails.
stuff all over. It's just like everywhere, which is very true. But let's see, the curcumin, the turmeric's all over your fingers. Can't get rid of them. 9 was your belly, and let's do the nuts, macadamia nuts. Like if you ever like walk down the street or you're in the office or school, whatever, and somebody was eating macadamia nuts out of their belly button, you would never forget that. You would remember that 10 years from now. All right. So just imagine somebody doing that, or you're doing that.
At least you didn't do nuts in the bottom correlated together.
Yeah. Well, that's why we say dark chocolate. So,
Oh God, I guess that's
so I don't even want to know what everyone's thinking about, but dark chocolate on your bottom. All right. So let's leave
I
it
took
there.
it there, sorry.
Yeah. That's funny how that worked out. Also, it's just like the oyster and the pearls. So now you're this person. You're at the store and you're walking down the aisles, and you didn't have to write your grocery list in triplicates, because now you have an internal list. And so just go from the top of your head to your bottom. So the first thing you need to buy on the top of your head, you had
I was washing my hair with avocado conditioner.
perfect avocados. Out of your nose were the
mulberries just
mulberries
falling out of my nose.
Perfect. Your mouth, you had stuck in there
broccoli and
kimchi. What does
just
that
terrible.
taste like? Yeah, I had Korean the other day, and the panchan, you know, those appetizers
Yeah.
they give you. There was broccoli and kimchi, so I just remember that duo right
Wife
there.
definitely doesn't want to kiss me.
Yeah. The fourth is your ears.
All of us, just
All the oils.
yeah,
All the healthy oils.
washing my ears.
Oh, clean your ears with the avocado oils, the macadamia nut oils, the olive oil. All right, number 5 on your throat, you was
My
stuck.
Adam's egg.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was like a poached or scrambled, or it's just the yolk just dripping on your neck. Perfect. So we're halfway there already. Yeah. So that's 5 or 6 of them already, with the kimchi added into the mouth. All right, from there, your shoulders, we were balancing cups of bone broth.
Yeah.
And so just imagine that. Maybe you're just, it spills over, but you have them as shoulder pads. Number 7 was a necklace made out of JR knows.
All kinds of
all the
Lovely-
fishes,
Lovely sea animals.
the oysters, and all those great brain foods. And then the 8 was your fingers. That was just covered in
turmeric, yes.
turmeric. And then 9 out of your belly button were the eating the
Nuts, just
Yeah.
pulling them out one by one.
the walnuts, the macadamia nuts.
Nice little layer of lint on
And
them.
then finally your bottom.
Dark chocolate.
Yeah. And I bet you'll remember them even going backwards. You could go from,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely not
Yeah.
going to forget dark chocolate in my butt.
Yeah. And then people could go through. So I would challenge everybody if they're watching, to put in the comments how many they actually remembered, forwards. And if they're able to do it backwards, that's even props to you. But that's, again, when you understand how your memory works, you could work your memory. And there's no such thing as a good or bad memory. There's a trained memory and an untrained memory. Unfortunately, in school, there's no class. They teach you 3 R's in school: reading, writing, arithmetic. Obviously, spelling wasn't one of them. But what about recall? What about retention? Socrates said learning is remembering. And there's always an easier, more enjoyable way to be able to learn.
No, that's epic, man.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Jim, where can everyone find you and where can we find your book?
Limitlessbook.com. This is an owner's manual for your brain. There are chapters in there on nootropics and foods, but the majority of the book is really how to master your mind, how to change negative thoughts, eliminate self-doubt, how to have limitless motivation. But most of the book are learning strategies: how to read faster, how to understand more what you read, how to learn languages, facts, figures, and how to focus, and so much more. So limitlessbook.com, and our YouTube. That's probably one of the best ways to consume. 95% of what we publish is absolutely free. We have a podcast that people just search my name in their favorite podcast app. And I would challenge everyone to take a screenshot of this if they're willing to take some kind of action, and then tag Thomas, tag myself, and share your favorite brain food. Out of all of these, or maybe there's something else that we didn't cover, what's your favorite brain food? And because you'll tag me, I'll see it, I'll repost some of my favorites, and we'll gift a handful of signed books to your community, just as a thank you for playing along.
Perfect, man.
Thank you.
Jim, thank you, my man.
Thank you so much.